As part of your Reform UK TUV agreement, you have some policy agreements on immigration, for example, and environmental policy. Do you agree with Nigel Farage that the UK should leave the European Convention on Human Rights?
I think when it comes to the point, and we're fast approaching that point, where the supremacy of not just EU law, but the distinct and different European Convention law is overriding the will of Parliament, then it is time to reassess and call time on that. And that's already beginning to happen. We saw that in the High Court challenge on both the Legacy Act and the migration legislation, where called in aid of those challenging and successfully challenging was reliance upon the ECHR provisions. So, if you reach a position where the sovereign parliament is overruled by a foreign convention, a convention to which you are presently ascribing, and a foreign court, then I think it's for Parliament to decide that either they are sovereign or they are not.
Well, isn't that the nature of all international treaties, as you know, that you're pulling some of your sovereignty with those, aren't you?
You are, but if it gets to the point where it is affecting fundamentals like the fact that a different migration law has to apply in somewhere which is still called part of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, and it can't be the same as applies elsewhere, then I think that cuts right to the quick of what it is to have sovereign control over all your territory.
Do you agree with the policy that foreign nationals who have been found guilty and served a sentence in the UK should be immediately deported?
I do.
Do you agree with the policy that they should have their British citizenship, if they have British citizenship at that point, withdrawn from them and made stateless?
I agree that the due process that would be involved in that should be pursued, and if that is the outcome of that due process, then that's fine by me.
Do you agree with the policy to abolish the Home Office and replace it with a Department for Immigration?
Well, I'm not hung up on what you call the various departments. I want to see the policies right. They can call the departments what they like.
Do you agree with Nigel Farage that NATO poked the bear, provoked Russia into its invasion of Ukraine?
No, I do not. My agreement with reform is on a limited number of issues. It does not include foreign affairs. And certainly, if that is Nigel's view, it's not my view. I think that the aggressor is Putin. I think he deliberately and consciously decided to suppress and subjugate a free people in Ukraine, and that the free world should be standing with those people who he is trying to suppress.
Leonard
he didn't tell the truth about it, and I think the electorate are entitled to expect the truth from those who expect their votes. Both Sammy and Ian are standing as the candidates of a party which tried to hoodwink the Unionist community on that issue. Hence the justification in circumstances where those are safe Union seats. In Northampton the last time, there were 34,000 Unionist votes in the Assembly election and 9,000 Sinn Féin votes. So even a three-way split, even an even three-way split, which it won't be, but it would ensure that a Unionist wins. So Unionists have the opportunity of choice. Well, and
let's get into this sea border business, Jim, in a bit more detail, because I promised you we would. And it is the DUP's position that they voted against the Northern Ireland Protocol. They've campaigned for changes aimed at reducing its impact and protecting Northern Ireland's place in the Union, right up to the Safeguarding the Union command paper. And they asked the question, and I'm quoting some DUP people in putting this question to you, what have you done to dismantle the Irish sea border except whinging about it?
Well, I think that Unionist electors know that the one party and one person, one leader who has stood unflinchingly against the protocol is TV and myself.
And
we have not
not Reform UK.
And we have not flip-flopped on this whatsoever.
Unlike Reform UK.
Well, it's where you end up in the protocol, not where you start, that matters.
Because Nigel Farage,
I think the problem is
for the protocol. Ben Habib voted for the protocol. Richard Tice voted for the protocol. Those are you're in bed with them now.
Well, I'm going to say it again. it's where you end up on the protocol that matters, not where you started. And people who started out right, and all the Unionist parties back in September 21 signed a solemn declaration of unalterable opposition to the protocol, its structures and its mechanisms. And first the Ulster Unionists shredded that, then the DUP disavowed that. The one party that stood strong and constant in that.
But what have you done apart from whinge?
Well, I was very active and indeed instigatory in the very important Supreme Court court challenge that went all the way to the Supreme Court, which confirmed what we've been saying about the protocol, that it has put that critical element of Article 6 of the Acts of Union in suspension. And that is of such fundamental importance. Understand our union. Our union's a political union created through one parliament established by Article 3 of the Acts of Union. It's an economic union created by Article 6 of the Acts of Union, guaranteeing unfettered access for our goods. The protocol fetters our access, so the Supreme Court has had to say that Article 6, that fundamental pillar of the union, is in suspension. Now, the Safeguarding the Union document of the DUP does nothing about that. In fact, it dissipates the very idea that Article 6 is even important. But coming back to the fundamentals...
Since the original protocol, the DUP has secured a reduction in the number of checks that are required. It has incrementally dismantled bits of the protocol.
Tiny bit.
Still there.
Tiny bit.
Needs to
Let's
be
be clear what has happened.
You both agree on that.
What has happened?
But they've done that. You haven't done any of that.
Sorry, the only easements are those which really assist the flow of goods to our supermarkets. But let's look what the DUP has done on the protocol. One of the most fundamental assaults on the position was the removal of the cross-community vote for consent, which is coming up at the end of this year, on whether the protocol continues
democratic
or not.
Consent,
democratic consent
majority now.
Well, let me just remind your listeners just something about that. To change from the cross-community to the simple majority, which was a disadvantaging of unionism and removing the opportunity to thwart the protocol. In doing that, the government brought a statutory instrument to the House of Commons. That went through the Statutory Instrument Committee. Any MP can go and speak against that. Not one of the 8 MPs went to speak against that when it went through. Then every MP has the opportunity to pray against such a statutory instrument, to force a vote in the House of Commons. Not one DUP MP shouted out against it, so it went through in the nod. So on that fundamental issue of removing from Unionists the cross-community protection on the protocol, the DUP MPs failed us. And then within a fortnight of that, in the Assembly, the DUP was voting for 45 different EU laws to implement them in Northern Ireland, with only Jim Wells and I voting against. So the DUP has not fought the battle well on the protocol. They have, in fact, when they had the whip hand, when they had the hung parliament, they squandered the opportunity to insist that we must leave as one nation. They squandered it instead for £1 billion. They lost sight of the constitutional imperative.
So that is your position. Obviously, the DUP will take a different position. But as you said earlier, Jim, it's where you end up on the protocol that matters more than anything else. Where has the DUP now ended up? It's exactly where you are, isn't it? The DUP is going into this election saying, yes, the REC border is still there and we want rid of it. And they're going into the election saying, we have done incrementally things to remove its effect, unlike TUV. The TUV can call for things like the creation of an intertrade UK body, as you did in your 2022 Assembly election. The DUP delivered it. So the DUP and TUV are presenting Unionist voters with a choice.
Well, yes,
not a choice on whether to keep the REC border, but which party's most effective in getting rid of it. And it's not you.
No, but you're judging a situation where the DUP had representation in Parliament and TUV didn't have. That's why we're having an election.
That's why you're ineffective.
That's why we're having an election, to see if people want to change that. Now, let's take the DUP message. 4 months ago, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, with Gavin Robinson standing nodding behind him, told us that their deal had got rid of the REC border. Then tail between their legs. Some weeks later, Gavin Robinson has to admit that is not true. Now, does that not raise a fundamental issue of trust for every voter? Who are you going to trust in this election? Are you going to trust those who tried to deceive and hoodwink you?
Well, you said
are they going to try? Are they going to try?
You said it's where you end up that matters.
Yes, but you have to end up with credibility.
Well, where's the credibility for Nigel Farage, Ben Habib, and
Nigel Farage?
They all voted
neither
for the
endorsing me
protocol.
nor on the ballot paper.
They voted for the. You trust them, don't you?
It's where you end
up.
They
voted
where
for
has
the protocol.
DUP ended up in the protocol? They have ended up
exactly
facing two ways. No, not exactly where I am. I have always faced in the one direction. I have always identified the protocol as that which is dismantling.
I'm not saying you flipped
that which
I'm saying they've ended up where you are.
Under the same 300 areas of law
no
that have been surrendered to the foreign parliament, the same laws that govern the trade and economy of the Irish Republic.
On the key question, there's no difference between you.
No, there is a fundamental difference.
You both accept the border exists, and you both want rid of it. Yes,
again,
where you've ended up.
Yes,
you both going into an election.
The
you both accept it exists, and you want to remove it, and they are more effective in removing it. That's their argument.
William, you can be as strong an election agent for the DUP as you wish.
I'm robust in all these interviews, Jim.
The fact is that the DUP has moved from protocol opponent to protocol implementers. They went back into Stormont on the false pretense, give up their leverage on the basis job done. Now they have to tell us we failed you. Their job was not done. I was maintained the leverage. That was the only leverage.
Stayed out of Stormont.
Absolutely.
You would have handed control, direct government control, to the very people who put the protocol in place. You would have done that.
Where's our control now? You know, last weekend there was an election across Europe to a foreign parliament. That foreign parliament controls 300 areas of law in Northern Ireland. Parliamentarians we don't elect, who make laws we can't change, covering environment, economy, trade. Those are all issues. That is so fundamentally a constitutional assault upon our position that continues. And that is now what the Northern Ireland what the Assembly is endorsing and implementing through the DUP by restoring it.
Well,
they are now protocol implementers, and they can't hide from that, and they will not hide from that.
You're a direct rule implementer.
Direct rule is better than Sinn Féin rule.
Direct rule means that you would have given the Tories a free hand without any devolved government here.
No, William. If I'd have been in Parliament, you can guarantee the Tories would not have had a free hand. The Prime Minister would not have got away with calling himself the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom when he has disunited the United Kingdom, when he has surrendered control over areas of law to a foreign Parliament.
On the backbench, one man whinging about what you did.
One man on the backbench in Stormont who has been quite effective. One man who
wouldn't have been effective as a solo operator.
Me as much
as
you like, William, and that seems to be your
purpose. Jim, don't take it personally. I'm asking robust questions.
Don't denigrate the voters of Northern Ireland. The voters of Northern Ireland are the people who will make the choice, not the BBC.
The voters
of Northern Ireland will know
what happened in the 2022 Assembly election. 53 out of the 90 seats returned were for parties favouring the continuation of the protocol. That's democracy in Northern Ireland. If you care about voters, that's what happened.
Sorry, you're the very man that I've heard tell me you can't have regular democracy in Northern Ireland. You must have cross-community support. And yet, that is the very issue that was taken away, and as far as the protocol is concerned, and that the DUP were asleep at the wheel on in the House of Commons when it was taken away. Cross-community support is supposed to be how Northern Ireland operates. If it did, then there would be a cross-community vote on the protocol. But there's not going to be, because it is now majoritarianism. On that, courtesy of the DUP being asleep at the wheel when that went through Westminster.
You and I are both going to take a breath, and you will hear it doesn't say.
I'm from Belfast.
Belfast, welcome.
Good to talk to you, Jim. Jim, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that you could take control of unionism. Where would you lead us in the next 5 years? Would Northern Ireland be stable under your leadership?
I believe it would, because I believe the instability has been caused by our detachment from the United Kingdom. And to put everything right, you have to get the foundations right. And therefore, we have to reunify the United Kingdom. That means getting rid of foreign law controlling 300 areas in Northern Ireland. That means getting rid of a partitioning Irish sea border. That means restoring our position, as the DUP promised they had, but patently hadn't, wholly within the United Kingdom. It's when we get the fundamentals right and get Northern Ireland back as a fully functioning part of the United Kingdom that there is the prospect of moving forward. As we go forward now, we are maximising instability because we're half in the United Kingdom, half in the EU, and that is a recipe for the instability that we're suffering.
Thank you very much, Arnold, though some others regard it as the best of both worlds in terms of dual access. Can I ask you, you still think Brexit was a good idea?
I would have loved if Northern Ireland had got Brexit.
Yeah,
we didn't get Brexit. We were left behind under their single market, under their customs.
But even when you
code.
campaigned for Brexit, there was always a question of what kind of Brexit we were going to get.
But I campaigned on the question that was on the ballot paper. Did I want the United Kingdom?
You're a realist. You understand how politics works.
No, I don't understand.
On the question of single market access.
Sorry, I don't understand that when you ask the people, would you like the United Kingdom to leave, that what you really mean is, would you like GB to leave and leave Northern Ireland behind, subject to foreign control, as a colony of the EU, subject to laws we don't make?
Has there been any practical economic benefit to the Brexit the UK got?
I think there has been, for GB, considerable benefit in the increase in their foreign trade and the freedom of that. But we are not allowed to benefit from that because we are tied to the apron strings of the EU, subject to their laws we don't make. So, of course, we didn't get Brexit. And sadly, that is the fundamental ongoing problem that needs to be addressed.
Jim, you turned 71 this year in April. And there's obviously a lot of steam still in you, for sure. I think you've probably outlived me. Are you intending this, though, to be your last Westminster race? How long do you see this fight
William, let's be very clear. We are all mortal. None of us have a guarantee of tomorrow, and we all should live our lives accordingly. But, if you want to take the longevity of MPs for North Antrim, I recall that there was an MP in North Antrim who was still MP at 84. I don't aspire to beat that record, I can assure you.
Right, and I'm not seeing much evidence of any Biden moments there with you at all. I'll give you that. One final question from me, and it's a question I've asked everybody, all the party leaders. If you could pass one new law, a brand new law at Westminster that would improve the lives of everybody across the country, what would that law be?
It would have to be a constitutional law to restore Northern Ireland and to restore the Acts of Union to their full place so that Northern Ireland is not an adjunct of the EU, that we are a full and integral part of the United Kingdom, ruled by British laws, be they made in Belfast or London, but certainly not by a foreign parliament in Brussels.
Jim Allister, thank you very much.
Call us